Never lease a car. I'm a multi-millionaire. I lease cars. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. I have ownership in a car rental business. I use business credit and business funding to buy rental cars to run this business. I even wrote an entire book on how to use business credit and funding to start a rental car business. I have learned a lot about cars, how to make money with cars, and more importantly, what you should never do if you want to make lots of money. I'm going to share all of that with you in this video. Let's go.
Noel. Yeah, she can fix that. You gotta get it done, no, you need to do it better. Well, she can fix that. Yeah, she can fix that. Investment to get back, trying to get a big stack. She can fix that. Let's fix that.
So let's get right into it. I literally wrote the book. You see it right here. And you can get this book absolutely free at freetorobook.com. I was making so much money with my rental car business that I just had to share all the secrets. And I'm going to share a big one with you right now that I learned after having this business for just a few years. So I have leased 2 luxury cars in my whole lifetime. At one point, we had a fleet of over 15 cars. I had a black Range Rover 2021 Range Rover that I leased, and then I had a 2021 Porsche Cayenne hybrid coupe. And I thought these cars were absolutely beautiful, and I leased both of them in my business's name. I did this because one of my accountants told me that with a business, and I needed some more write-offs at the time, that I actually could write off more if I leased the cars versus the way that we were doing it. Because again, if you have a car and you use a car in your business, as a side note, you can write off those expenses. You can do it by mileage, or you can take the actual expenses and write that off. Or if you have a lease, you can write off the entire lease payment. So it actually seemed like this really brilliant idea to lease these cars, and I would use them in my business, and they would be for free because I would drive them and when I had clients. And if I wasn't driving one of them, I would lease them out on Turo, and I would make lots of money. Well, let me share with you exactly what happened with the Porsche Cayenne coupe, because that is the car that gave me the headache, where I'm telling you, never lease a car, even for your business. So let me go back. The black Range Rover was absolutely amazing. I actually was able to rent that car out. And what I ended up doing is buying out the lease. And literally my business partner now has the black Range Rover. He loved it. He would drive it sometimes, and he absolutely loved it. So that car was not really much of an issue, but we actually overpaid because I actually leased the car, and then we bought the car out, and then he now pays for it or whatever he does with it. Well, that was paying more for the car than it ever was needed to pay, because the lease payments were nearly $2,000 per month, plus the down payment, that you give for the taxes and all those stuff in order to get the lease going. So I want to say that we put $5,000 down, and the lease was for 3 years, 36 months, and the payments were right under $2,000. And again, this was through the Range Rover dealership. It was brand new when we got it. And so Range Rover deals with Chase Bank. And so the lease was through Chase, et cetera, et cetera. But again, we bought that car out, and my business partner now has that car, drives it. It's absolutely fine. No issues with that car, not even renting it out. Sometimes people will rent it, pay lots of money to rent it for proms, especially during prom season. Lots of kids wanted to rent it. We had a lot of business owners that wanted to rent it. It was great when I picked up clients, and the Range Rover actually did really good. I still don't ever suggest leasing it, but the nightmare lease was really that Porsche Cayenne coupe. So with the Porsche Cayenne coupe, it was just a car that I wanted. I never got the car with the right intention. Just being honest, I just absolutely love that car. I had a Porsche Panamera. I got a Porsche Cayenne for my mom, and then I wanted my own Porsche truck. So when I saw that chalk gray, beautiful Porsche Cayenne coupe, and then it was a hybrid. It was an e-hybrid, means I could drive it on electric, I could drive it as a hybrid, or I could drive it as an all-gas car. This car has all those features, and it even has Sports Plus, so it is super fast. I love this car. I would pick clients up in it. I loved it. It was really fast. I love fast cars, and it was just a beautiful car that I felt that I looked really great in, and so that's why I got that car. And again, I leased it in my business's name, and I thought at the time that I would put it on Turo just a couple of times a month, so that the car was free for me. That was the plan. Well, so many issues with this car. Number one, it was super hard to use because it was an e-hybrid. People would actually lease the car, and I actually didn't even get to lease it on Turo for very many months because of the complications. People would not know how to start the car. They would not know how to turn it off. They didn't understand how to work the buttons. Basically, whenever someone rented this car, I needed to explain all of this stuff to them before they could even drive off. It's actually worse than the Lamborghini. Literally, the Lamborghini just says start right here, and you just step on the brake and push the start button, and the car starts up. Well, with this Porsche Cayenne Coupe hybrid, it does not. When you turn the knob, even when you're stepping on the brake, nothing happens. That's because the car starts in electric mode. So like a Tesla, you really just put it into to drive and step on the accelerator. Well, they didn't get this because this was not an electric car. It's the car that looks like a gas car with a gas pedal and a brake and all the rest of the stuff. So people did not understand that. I turned the car on and it turned on in electric mode. So people would say, hey, this car is not working. It doesn't work. They would call me. They would say, oh my God, or, you know, whoever the hotline was. And the car ended up being an absolute disaster. Additionally, we leased that car and there were so many things wrong with that. Let me explain. First, I strongly suggest if you rent cars on Turo and you have a Turo rental car business, you definitely use the Turo Cars Insurance. With Turo, when someone is driving your car, a guest is driving your car, they are under Toro's insurance if you opt to host your cars that way, which I strongly suggest. And again, if you want to learn about this business, get my free book, Toro Millionaire Secrets, at freetorobook.com. There's a link in the description box. This book is absolutely free. You just cover the shipping. This will break down the entire rental car business and how you can even use business credit to start the entire business. But let's get back to what I was saying. This car was for Turo in a sense. So if someone else is driving the car, they are under Toro's insurance. If I am driving the car, I am under my insurance. So Turo is a kind of a safer way, much like Airbnb, to have an entire business where you don't have to have everything in place and you don't have to pay for everything. You could, of course, get your own commercial insurance policy so that anyone can drive your car, but those policies are super expensive. But if you put your car on Turo and you do the Turo guarantee with the insurance, when someone is driving your car, a Turo guest is driving your car, they are under Toro's insurance. When you are driving your car, you are under your insurance. Well, that's an easy way to do it. That makes me calm. That is how I'm able to put luxury cars on Turo and do this business. Okay, but let me get into the hairy part. One, a lease car is not an asset. So because the car is leased, it's not actually an asset. You never could pay it down and own it. It doesn't really go on your balance sheet as an asset. It really is just a liability for your business. So the fact that you have a car and you can't really pay it off and ever get the title for it and make it your lease, or if you do want to buy it out, it's more expensive than just buying the car from the start. It really became so much more expensive by leasing a car. Additionally, the insurance that you have to have on a leased car is more expensive, because you have to have higher coverages. You can't just have lower coverages like 50, 100. You have to have 100, 300, or etc. The lease company, especially with a Porsche, will dictate to you the minimum amount of insurance that is required for you. And again, the minimum amount is higher than the minimum for a financed car. So that was one of the things that I had not taken into consideration, that I had to have this higher insurance. Okay, that's fine for me. But for most people, that is going to be a deal killer because, of course, you are putting this car on Turo and Turo is going to be covering the insurance. So you don't want to have this super high insurance for your own policy when you know that guest driving your car will be under Toro's policy. But again, leasing a car will dictate the type of insurance that you need and the amount of coverage that you need, and it is higher than financing a car. So that is an additional expense that's going to ruin some of your profits. Number two, it was not that big tax write-off that I expected. Like I told you before, I got these cars and I leased these cars in my business's name. They did not show on my personal credit report, which was a great thing because they were in the business's name. And then I personally was the guarantor on it. It did not report on my credit report. However, it was not this big tax deduction that I thought it was going to be. Again, you can write off cars used for your business. You can write off just the mileage and do that as a deduction. You can do the actual expenses and say, hey, I spent this, and write those things off. But if you lease a car, you can write off the entire lease payment. And that seemed phenomenal. But when you do the comparison, the numbers were the same. Again, I told you I had over 15 cars and these were the only ones that were leased. So I was able to actually directly compare the financed cars versus the leased cars and realize those leased cars weren't renting as much as I wanted. Of course, the Porsche was a disaster because people could not understand the car. So I couldn't really lease it as, rent it on Turo as much as I wanted. And two, the insurance was really high. And then three, the big thing that I did it for, this big tax deduction, I never saw. Number 4, leases have extra restrictions. As I've mentioned before, not only do you have to have higher coverages, you have to do certain maintenance, they actually restrict you from putting it on sites like Turo. Now, I am a rule breaker. I'm not going to say that I break any laws or anything like that, but any millionaire, a person that has become a millionaire will tell you they are probably not following every single rule and they will take risks, calculated risk. And so in this one here, I knew that in the lease, it may have said that I couldn't do it, but at the same time, I didn't really care. I was willing to take that risk. Now, you as someone, depending on your situation, that may not be a risk that you're willing to take depending on your bank account. And again, in the beginning of my business, I probably wouldn't, but at this level, I was like, whatever. I know what the consequences are. If they ever caught me, I could buy this car. I got the money. I'm good. I was willing to do that. But at the same time, you do always feel a little shaky because you know you're doing something you're not really supposed to do. So leasing a car with the intention of making it into a car that you're going to put on Turo, probably not a good idea because you know in your heart that it says in the lease not to do that. Mileage costs. Another amazing thing that happened that I found out was the mileage costs were super expensive. So if you go over the miles on your lease, you will pay a very hefty fee. Well, when it comes to Turo, you give people a certain amount of mileage and you charge them if they go over on their mileage. So quite frankly, putting a leased car on Turo could definitely work because you're going to pass any cost onto that consumer and you're going to have that money in your pocket. However, once you have to turn the lease in, if you're over on your mileage, it wasn't profitable for you. If you finance the car and you charge people extra for driving on Turo, that's actually profit for you. But if you have those profits and you have to give it right back to the lease company when you turn the lease in, well, you didn't actually make anything. So those mileage restrictions really hurt you. But just know with luxury cars, when you put them on Turo, you do give a smaller amount of miles to people. So if you're renting, for example, like a Dodge Caravan or a Chrysler Pacifica or a Honda Accord, just a regular type of car, if you rent that on Turo, you may do unlimited mileage. But if you have a really nice car like a Range Rover or a Porsche or a Lamborghini, you are going to limit the amount of miles that guest can drive. You are going to say you are limited to 250 miles or 350 miles or some very low amount of miles because you don't want a lot of miles on that car because it will affect the value of the car, whether you finance it or whether you lease it. So leasing the car is even more of a hassle for you because you have to keep that mileage in check. If you finance the car, really all you're doing is depreciating it. You're not actually costing yourself money that you're going to have to pay when you turn that lease in. So big lesson learned. Maintenance costs. And this is the killer. This is why I am telling you never lease a car. I gave you a whole laundry list, but this is actually the big reason right here. When you finance a car, you have to maintain your car. When you lease a car, you have to maintain your car. That's what cars are for. They need to be maintained. However, why would you want to pay maintenance on a car that you're giving back, especially on a luxury car? The maintenance is very expensive. I literally had one repair on the Porsche that was nearly $5,500 for this one repair on this Porsche. Well, that's a lot of money to pay to have a car fixed on a car that you are leasing and you are going to be giving back to the dealer. Again, when you're leasing a car, you still have to do all of the scheduled maintenance, the oil changes, the tire rotations, the normal just stuff that you do. Well, you also have to pay for any repairs that are done, or if something goes wrong and really needs an expensive maintenance, you still have to get that done. And you have to give the car back. So you're really losing on quite a lot because in many cases, if you put in a lot of money on a car that you're financing, one day you will own that car, you'll keep it a long time, and you will recoup that investment for that maintenance. Well, with a lease, a 3-year lease, if a repair like I had happens in year 2, you put $5,500 into a car you're giving back in less than a year. That actually happened to me, and that was the true kick in the rear that I realized that I would never lease another car. This was way too expensive. The residual value and the buyout was way more than it should have been. When I added up all of the payments that I had made for the 3 years, plus what they wanted for the buyout, it would have been nearly $20,000 more than the MSRP on the car originally. And I had to pay sales tax in every single payment. And I didn't get the tax deduction that I wanted. And the car was hard for people to understand. It was complicated. And I realized never lease a car. You can make lots of money with cars. Actually, I have some cars that I make more than I do on some of my rental properties. Literally, you can rent out Hondas and Toyotas and minivans and different cars like that. And you can have some great luxury cars in your fleet as well. You can get my book, 𝗂𝘂 Millionaire Secrets, absolutely free, that will teach you how to use business credit and business funding to get cars and start this whole business. I've helped so many people with their 𝗂𝘂 business. I've literally met people that have told me about their 𝗂𝘂 business, and I still rent cars from 𝗂𝘂. It is an amazing business, or even a side business to your job if that's what you want to do. You can learn this business really easily, and there is a very low barrier to entry. You can get started in literally like a couple of days. You can even use your own car to get started and make a little bit of money, and then start adding cars to your fleet as you build your business credit. Again, this book is absolutely free. Just go to freeToroBook.com. Get my book, 𝗂𝘂 Millionaire Secrets, absolutely free. You just cover the shipping. Again, that's freeToroBook.com. That's FREETUROBOOK. freeToroBook.com. Go right now, get this book. We will ship it immediately. You just cover the shipping. I want you to have a successful business because I want you to have all of the knowledge, all of the resources, and all of the tools that you need to be successful. This is Noelle. To your success.